In the absolute hush of her darkened living room, Evelyn's voice faltered as the leaked audio replayed. Tamar's laughter cut like a knife into her chest. It was icy and blatantly insulting. After the explosion in the previous episode, everyone assumed Evelyn had quietly left. The world was unaware, however, that Tamar had pressed one button too far and made too many phone calls. Now that she had had enough of being betrayed, Evelyn was prepared to retaliate. Not with anger, but with the one thing Tamar never thought she was brave enough to utter aloud. She never required her money. She craved the respect that Tamar had been depriving her of for so long. However, a second, far more devastating portion of the leaked call started to play tonight. Evelyn had never heard of it before. It dawned on her that Tamar wasn't the only one who was lying. The fire had been fed by someone nearby. And the family as a whole might be destroyed by her next action. As the same 30-second footage replayed for the 5th time, Evelyn sat by herself in the semi-dark, the TV's illumination bathing her face. That familiar voice, that sad little laugh. Tamar repeatedly. In the audio leak, Tamar's voice remarked, cool and sure, she'll be back. When the costs mount, she always returns. She is more in need of my money than my affection. She is simply that. Evelyn let out a low, trembling breath. The last explosion has already happened to them. Michael Jr.'s celebration was dampened. Tamar barged out. Expensive presents broke on the ground. Like a child once more, Tawanda got caught in the center. Evelyn had made the decision to discreetly leave that house in the last episode of this family catastrophe, holding on to her dignity like a thin blanket around her shoulders. She promised herself she wouldn't beg. She refused to pursue. However, this was not like the others. It was not intended for this call to be answered. Her ears were never supposed to hear it. It was secretly taped, released in whispers, and circulated like gossip candy on blogs and group chats. Because Tamar's portrayal of Evelyn as avaricious, dependent, and clinging was accurate, everyone now believed that Evelyn had remained silent, because she was guilty. Tamar's sigh marked the conclusion of the video. In any case, it is her decision to prioritize pride over assistance. All I want is for her to quit acting like she isn't using my money and name. Click. The sound ceased. Tamar's voice was drowned out by the stillness that followed. Evelyn's hands were so tightly gripped that she leaned forward in her chair. They had white knuckles. Trapped behind years of preparing herself to be tough in front of her children, tears rested in her eyes, but refused to fall. She said, "I never needed your money," at the blank TV screen. The silence was broken when her phone buzzed on the coffee table. "I needed my child. Ciao Wanda." Evelyn's jaw tightened as she gazed at the name. When she last saw her, Tanda had positioned herself between her and Tamar, arms extended like a referee, begging them to stop, to consider the audience, the cameras, and the story. But when this call leaked, where had Tawanda been? Now, where was her voice? The buzzing ceased. With her thumb lingering slightly above the call symbol, Evelyn swallowed and picked up the phone. She thought for a long minute about putting it back down, and allowing the unanswered call to do the talking. Rather, she tapped. On the first ring, Tawanda responded. Ma Evelyn was not interested in making small talk. "How long have you been acquainted?" There was a quick inhalation on the other end. "What is known?" "Girl, don't toy with me." Evelyn spoke in a smooth, deep voice that sounded too serene. "That call, that recording. Tamar is talking about me as if I were a stray puppy that was waiting for her at the back door. How long have you been aware of its existence?" Tawanda remained silent. Evelyn's living room's ancient walls creaked and settled in the quiet. The refrigerator buzzed somewhere down the hall. The sound of a car door slamming outside was muffled by distance. Tawanda finally said something. Ma, I only learnt about it now. Evelyn shut her eyes. She desired to be believed. She yearned to rest her head on her daughter's lap like she had in the past, when things were easier and suffering didn't involve hashtags and comment sections. But in this family, trust had become a luxury. You sound like you're lying, Evelyn stated firmly but sweetly. Tawanda answered, I swear. Auntie, did you see what they posted about Grandma? Michael Jr. asked me when I woke up. That's how I found out. The mention of Michael Jr. made Evelyn's heart ache. Where is he? She said. Over at my place right now, Tawanda replied. He's agitated. He's caught in the middle, not knowing who to believe. He heard his mother and saw your face on those posts. Evelyn laughed bitterly, just like you always did. There was a long pause, and Tawanda took that in quietly. There was no argument or defense. When she spoke again, her voice was small. Ma, this isn't fair to any of us, but I'm done being the quiet character in somebody else's script, Evelyn whispered as the room darkened. I'm not just the mama in Tamar's storyline, she said. That call should never have seen the light of day. Whoever leaked it did it to hurt you. And maybe to hurt her too. Whoever leaked it knew exactly what they were doing. No more. What will you do? Evelyn's jaw tightened as Tawanda inquired. I'm going to say what I should have said a long time ago. And I won't say it in a dressing room, a hallway, or a kitchen. Like she did. I'm going to speak it so that everyone can hear me. Please, Ma. Tanda's voice became panicked. Don't post this on blogs, please. Avoid going live. You are aware of how this works. We will all be consumed by it. I made no mention of visiting the blogs. Evelyn answered. I promised to talk. I'll start by talking to my kids. Then it must be heard by everyone else. Tawanda paused. She's on the defensive already. She claims that the call was altered. She claims that you exploited her for many years. You are confronting this head-on. It might blow up worse. Evelyn gave herself a self-satisfied smile. This family has been blowing up for years, baby. Someone's hit record is the only thing that has changed since then. When Tawanda spoke, she was silent once more. She said softly, visit my home tomorrow. At night. Only family. No outsiders, no cameras. If we're going to bleed, you, me, Tamar, and Michael Jr., let's do it in private for once. Evelyn leaned her head back against the seat. She gazed at the ceiling, at the fissures she was familiar with. Tomorrow night, she said again. I'll cook, of course. No justifications. And she will arrive? Evelyn inquired. After everyone heard her say, I need her money, Tamar is going to walk her noisy rear into your home and sit down at a table with me. I've already spoken with her. Quietly, Tawanda spoke. She's angry, but she's also afraid. She promised to arrive. Evelyn's chest pain turned into something more. Not rage just yet. Something heavier, grief-like. Finally, she said, okay. Before Tawanda could say anything more, she hung up tomorrow night, allowing the call to fall into silence like a stone into deep water. With her phone in hand and her makeup still smudged from the video she had just taken and erased, Tamar paced her bedroom across town. Play it once more. She whispered. She clicked the link again, and heard her own voice come back to her. She will return. When the costs mount, she always returns. She halted in the middle and tossed the phone onto the bed. That's not even how I said it. She snapped at herself. They chopped it. They removed the portion in which I said, I love my mama, but her chest. I become enraged. I let it out. That was a private call. My worst moment was being stolen and thrown into the streets by someone. A cloud passed over her eyes as he asked, "That's not just about me and your grandma. That's about somebody trying to destroy us. Who would do that? That's what I want to know." He shifted his weight and chewed the inside of his cheek, as if he was holding something back. At last, he said, "Ma, did you know Auntie Tawanda texted me before the call dropped? She asked if I'd heard something strange a few days ago, like a weird click on the line when you were talking to her." Tamar's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" He shrugged uneasily. "I didn't think anything of it, but now I'm going to your auntie's tomorrow night," Tamar said. "Family talk," she added, staring at him with a shiver running up her spine. "I don't know. It feels like somebody's listening, watching. Grandma will be present. Would you like me to attend?" He asked, and she paused, noticing the terror in his eyes as well as another thing, a conflicted sense of loyalty. "Yes," she said at last, her voice steady, "because whatever happens, you're going to see it with your own eyes. Not through a screen, not through somebody else's edit. We're going to put it all on the table." The following evening, Tanda's house was warm with the aroma of baked chicken and garlic, but the air itself was cold with tension. Evelyn arrived first, wearing a simple dress, no armor, no extra jewelry, just herself. With her purse and years of unspoken words, she stood in the doorway and listened to the sounds of the house, including Tawanda's clinking dishes in the kitchen, the faint murmur of a TV in the back room, and the ticking clock on the wall. Tawanda appeared, wiping her hands on a towel, her eyes tired but her smile gentle. "Hey, Ma." Evelyn nodded. Evelyn said softly, "I want the truth, but I'll take some water while we wait." She sat at the dining room table, the old wooden one Tawanda had insisted on keeping, even after she upgraded everything else in the house. The table had seen holidays, arguments, card games, and late-night confessions. "Hey, baby." They gave each other a quick hug, their bodies touching, their minds still guarded, each woman scanning the other for new scars. It was set up like a stage tonight, with plates set, cutlery arranged and napkins folded neatly. The front door opened once more, and Tamar entered with Michael Jr. at her heels. When she saw Evelyn, her typically dramatic entrance was subdued, with no loud greeting or sunglasses, just a cautious "Hey, Mom." Evelyn's steady, impenetrable gaze locked with hers. "Hello, Grandma," slid forward Tamar. Michael Jr. that softened her. She held out her arms, and he went into them, taller than she remembered. Heavier with the weight of all this mess. She pressed her cheek to his. "You okay, baby?" He paused, then nodded into her shoulder while Tawanda busied herself setting the table with dishes, moving too quickly, as if she were attempting to keep her hands from trembling. At first, no one touched the food. They sat around the table, the distance between Evelyn and Tamar thick with years of love and pain. When Tanda finally cleared her throat, she said, "Okay, we're here. No cameras, no microphones, no friends, no managers, no stylists, no producers, just us. So, let's do what we never seem to do before the world gets involved. Let's talk." Evelyn folded her hands on the table. "You want me to go first?" Tamar nodded slightly. "You usually do." Something in that response hurt, but Evelyn ignored it, taking a slow breath. "I heard the call," she repeated. "I heard my child talk about me like I'm a burden you're forced to carry, like I'm some bill you pay out of obligation." Evelyn interrupted sharply, saying, "I needed my daughter, not her wallet. You sure didn't say that when you were staying in my guest room with all your stuff." Tamar laughed once, humorlessly. "And I want you to know something very clear. Since you like to talk so clearly to other people." Tamar yelled, Don't make it sound like you were just this little helpless woman on my couch, and I was the big bad wolf. Oh, I was never helpless. Evelyn's eyes blazed. I stayed under your roof, because I thought being close to you would bring us back together. But you counted every night like you were clocking my debt. That's not fair. I worked hard, cleaned floors, did hair, sold whatever I had to sell to keep food in your mouth, prayed over you while you slept, and asked God to make you more than what we were born into. When you succeeded, I thanked him, not because my life became easier, but Tamar swallowed hard and blinked quickly. I was mad, she said. I thought you wouldn't have to break the way I did. But somewhere along the way, you started acting like the only thing I ever wanted from you was the same thing I gave you. Sacrifice. Money. And now the whole world thinks I'm just some greedy mama leaning on her famous child. On the phone, you had just labeled me ungrateful. You said that I had forgotten my origins. You did, Evelyn muttered. Did I? Because every time I try to set a boundary, you throw you in my face, Tamar retorted, raising her voice. I become this self-centered, wicked daughter every time I say no. The pressure I'm experiencing is invisible to you. Being the person that everyone calls when something goes wrong. Being the one with the spotlight, the bank, and the savior. You claim that you never needed my money, but each time I take a step back, it seems like I'm putting my own needs ahead of my mother's. And there is a lot of guilt. Michael Jr.'s gaze darted between them as he moved in his chair. Unnoticed, Tawanda observed in silence as tears welled up. She said, "Can I say something?" No, both women simultaneously responded. The tension cracked for a moment, but it didn't break, and they managed a faint, strained laugh at that. Evelyn took a close look at Tamar, noting the tightness in her jaw and the fatigue beneath the cosmetics. I am not your enemy, she muttered. I have the right to tell you when you hurt me, because I am your mother. Hearing you say, I'm using you, over the phone felt like you tore up the last remaining sacred part of us. I was videotaped without my permission. Tamar responded, they took something I said in anger and made it into a weapon against you. Against me. That's the real enemy here. Who are they? Evelyn insisted. That call was made by whom? Who else was present? Tamar paused. My friend and I were there. A friend with a long memory and a strong signal. Dryly, Evelyn said. Michael Jr. cleared his throat. Grandma, I heard another voice on the leak for a brief moment before it was cut. The voice of a man sounded as though he was in the room rather than on the phone. Everybody turned to stare at him. A man. Evelyn said it again. Tamar's thoughts were racing. The manager who arrived late, the stylist who left early, the dressing room that evening, the dispute, the vent session, the door that hadn't completely clicked shut, and the one individual who constantly entered and exited without anybody noticing. On the table, Tanda's phone buzzed. She frowned as she looked down at it. It's strange. What? Tamar posed a pointed question. Tanda replied, her face losing color as she read, it's a text, from an unidentified number. Evelyn's heart fell. What does it say? Tawanda read aloud slowly. Wait until they hear what she said about you, Tanda, if you think it was a negative thing. The second clip will be released soon. For a time, the room whirled. What? Tamar muttered. With shaky fingers, Tawanda clicked the associated file. The second audio clip started to play. It wasn't Tamar this time. Evelyn's voice was heard. Tanda is weak, yet I adore her. According to the tape, she trails behind tomorrow like a young dog afraid of losing her money and way of life. Everybody does. Half of these people would vanish if tomorrow lost everything. Observe. You'll see. Evelyn's jaw dropped. She started, "I never." The clock ticked on the wall, tick, tick, tick. Michael Jr. took a deep breath, his eyes filling with the guilt he could no longer hide. "Grandma," he said in a barely audible whisper. Tawanda glanced at the text again, her hands shaking. "Clip 2 is coming soon, that means there's more. It's like they're scheduling our destruction." With a twisted heart, Evelyn turned to face him and said, "I need to tell you something." He glanced at Tamar, then Tanda, and then back at Evelyn, asking, "What is it, baby?" "The first clip," he uttered softly. They responded, "The one of Mum. I got it before everybody else did in my DMs from the same unknown number. They threatened to send something worse if I didn't post it on the blog. Grandma, there's something about you. They claimed that if I didn't, you would appear to be the liar." Evelyn's blood ran cold when I didn't tell her the truth about Mum initially. With a look of dismay on her face, Tamar muttered, "You're the one who leaked it." He sobbed, "I didn't want to. I promise I didn't." They continued to text despite my attempts to ignore it. They claimed to have videos of each of you. Grandma, you, Auntie Tawanda. They said that this would eventually come to an end. I reasoned that I could control how bad it got if the first one came from me. I could alert you all. I believed that I could keep us safe. Tamar knocked her chair over as she pushed back from the table. "You put your own mother on blast to protect us," she gasped out. He wailed, "I'm sorry. I thought people would understand if they saw you being honest and venting. I had no idea they would chop it. I had no idea that they would make you appear to despise Grandma." Evelyn stared at him in disbelief, thinking of her sweet boy, their bridge, and their hope. Tawanda's phone buzzed once more, sending her another text. She didn't want to look, but her hand moved on its own, and she opened it. This time, there were no words, just another audio file. She tapped it with a trembling finger, and a calm voice emerged from the speaker. "Controversy sells," the man remarked. "Evelyn, you understand how this business operates. Tamar's name, yours, and the entire family. People devour it. I'll take care of the story. You want the world to know your truth. You gave me permission to record. You talk from your heart. When and what to release will be up to me. We'll make sure they see exactly what you want them to see, I promise." Evelyn's gaze grew wide. That voice was familiar to her. Tamar did the same. Tawanda did the same. Michael Jr. was able to identify the polished assurance and the fluid tone. It was a voice that had existed for many years. A voice they had all once trusted. While their family was bleeding on stage, a voice that had secured gigs and negotiated deals stood in the wings. Tamar's hand shot to her lips. Gosh, oh gosh. As fear filled her chest and realization set in, Evelyn scarcely moved her lips as she whispered the word. The recording went on. The man smoothly said, "Don't worry. I'll counterbalance anything that might make you appear a little uncomfortable with anything that also makes her appear uncomfortable, stimulates conversation. You maintain your relevance in this way. That's how you succeed." The video abruptly terminated. The silence in the room seemed eerie. A car passed outside, its headlights flickering across the window like lightning in the distance. A family sat motionless inside, their world tilted. They were all familiar with the man whose voice they had just heard. He had a connection to them, their company, their brand, and their suffering. Evelyn felt her heart thumping in her chest. "He's been recording us," she muttered. "For how long?" Tamar asked, her voice shaking and her eyes wide. Tawanda's phone buzzed a third time, like a heartbeat. "If he has you on tape, if he has me, if he has all of us." They were unable to stop. The screen displayed another message. This one consisted of just 7 words and a fresh audio file. Evelyn, are you prepared for the real story? The third clip. Tawanda's thumb lingered over the play button. Michael Jr. gazed at his grandmother after staring at the phone. Don't, he uttered horrifyingly. Please, not just yet. Evelyn felt the crossroads rising beneath their feet as she gazed at each of them, her shaken grandson and her broken daughters. There was no going back once that clip started to play. She reached for the phone with a shaking hand, then stopped, her fingers just a breath away. Slowly, she raised her gaze to meet Tamar's across the table. She whispered before we hit play. I have a question. You alone, no managers, no cameras, no edits. On the final word, her voice broke. Do you think I've only ever needed your money? Tamar finally opened her mouth and started crying. The phone buzzed insistently around them once more. The sender, who is not identified, is waiting. Sitting there, poised to explode, was the man behind the voice watching the third clip. Everything they believed to be true. Tamar started to respond when the fresh notification appeared on the screen once more. It was more than simply a text this time. One of the largest gossip sites in the nation issued the public alert. Unique. Leaked audio reveals the true identity of the Braxton family, according to the headline. Meltdown video number 3. In 5 minutes, it will go live. The clock on the wall began to tick louder as everyone at the table stared at the words, counting down to a reality that would soon be brought into the light with or without their agreement. And Evelyn came to the chilling realization that they were no longer in control of whether or not to click play. However, throughout the next 5 minutes, they spoke to one another. That was still the case. The countdown pulsed on the screen. The next leak is in 5 minutes. The Globe didn't hear clip 3 for 5 minutes. A woman, her children, and her grandson have 5 minutes to make a decision. Were they going to allow this man, this voice, to write the remainder of their tale, or were they going to reunite at last? Before everyone witnessed them disintegrate once more. The clock continued to tick away. The episode ended with Evelyn's shaking hand still lingering over Tawanda's phone, her eyes fixed on Tamar's, as the two women stood on the brink of a decision that might either permanently break or mend them. An appeal for action. What would you advise Evelyn, Tamar, Tanda, and Michael Jr. to do in the 5 minutes before clip 3 drops if you were seated at that table with them? Would you walk away and confront the world on your own terms, or would you hit play? I'd want to hear from you. If Evelyn's whisper caused a sting in your chest, you can see this isn't simply their narrative when Tamar says, I never needed your money, or when she realizes her own son shared the first clip out of fear. Every mother who feels misinterpreted, every daughter who feels exploited, and every family that has allowed outsiders to turn personal suffering into public amusement are all affected. Post your opinions in the comments section. Right now, which side are you on? Michael Jr.'s, Evelyn's, Tamar's, or Tanda's? Or do you believe that they are all victims of someone else's manipulation? Do you think the man responsible for the recordings should be made public? Or should he be handled in the background by the family first? If this episode piqued your interest, make sure you enjoy it and subscribe, so you don't miss the next installment of this drama. Clip 3 is going to change everything. When the truth about who has been recording, who consented to what, and what was said off camera eventually comes to light, turn on your notifications. When it occurs, you are here with us. Tell your tale here if you've ever had a private family moment turn into rumors. You never know who could need to realize that they're not by themselves.